Okay, so hi, as Mark said, I'm Walter. I'm the lead UX designer at BEETLE. I've been in Slovakia for almost 6 years. A few words about myself before coming to Slovakia and working in UX design. I used to work as a developer for about 2 years before I switched into UX design. And that's like a small summary, and I think we can just dig in. All right, so if you're a designer, and let's say that you want to create a new feature or a new screen for the project that you're working on, chances are that probably that's what you do when you're about to start. You probably go on Dribbble, and you're looking for inspiration probably. That's kind of like a natural instinct. When you're starting something new, you might go to look for some inspiration. Maybe Dribbble, or maybe you go for Mobbin. Mobbin is, well, it's slightly better than Dribbble. It doesn't have desktop design, it's mostly mobile design. But what you find on Dribbble, what you find on Mobbin that's different from Dribbble is that here you only have applications that actually exist. Because on Dribbble, sometimes you have this inspiration that's like kind of like fake applications that don't really exist. But here, at least, it's everything that actually it's out there, it's live. You have some nice features there. If you're looking at, say, for some tab design for some mobile application, you have some things here. If you're trying to understand or figure out how to do some banners on mobile applications, then you can find it here. It's quite a nice tool. I prefer it as opposed to Dribbble. But then that's a bit similar to what actually developers do. I've been a developer before, so sometimes when you're a developer and you don't know what to do, like how to code something, you go on Stack Overflow, and it's actually sometimes a joke. You're like a Stack Overflow developer. You go there, how to parse a string in JavaScript. Then you get like the snippet of code there, and you maybe use it directly in your application. Oh, but at least developers, they already know that you should probably not be copying code from Stack Overflow directly. Normally, sometimes there are these problems. Sometimes the code's not very optimized. Sometimes there are some dependencies that may crash your code. So normally they take very much care in not just copying code from Stack Overflow. But sometimes when we are designers, we don't pay that much attention. We just like consider that like a good solution and just use it right away. Because basically when we are looking for Dribbble and Mobbin or Behance or whatever you prefer, we are trying to find some inspiration on how to do nicer design that looks prettier, let's say. Or you're trying to find some inspiration how to do some design that's more innovative, that's, let's say, cooler, that's something that's not out there yet, at least in your local market. So let's say that maybe you go on Dribbble and you find some patterns about how to draw some cards or some eShop patterns or some future patterns. And then you get that, you put that in your application. You maybe change the branding a bit, you change the corners. And then you're happy because you found something that actually looks nice and it might work well in your application. I don't want to point fingers and say you shouldn't be using Dribbble, you shouldn't be using Mobbin or Behance. Like I use those things myself. Before this presentation, I was actually checking my browser history and I saw that last week, the only day that I didn't use Mobbin or Dribbble was Wednesday. So I'm a very heavy user of those things. But you should be careful when you're using that. And I have one example here. Basically, I was looking for some inspiration for a food delivery application, and I found this one yesterday, which looks very good. The colors are great, iconography, imagery, typography. It looks very good. And you see there in the comments that people are just giving some compliments to that. They say, very nice interface, nice work, elegant, and like all of that's actually true. It looks very nice. However, people don't notice a few things. So if you look there, there are some actually potential issues in this interface. You see some menu there that's, well, hamburger menu is already not very good, but there's one there that's even less standard. There's some banner there that you cannot actually close, so it's hiding some information from down here. There are no future options for you to get deeper into the restaurants except for the type of food. It doesn't say which restaurant you're actually ordering from in your checkout here. You're also not able to edit your checkout options. And they have this concept of persons here that you don't really know what it is about. So it's like, does it look good? yes, like would you get inspiration how to do some tabs and how to do some colors and how to put things together? Sure. However, you should always pay attention to all the things that are there as well. So my question is focusing on aesthetics a problem? Because it kind of sounds like I'm saying that you should be focusing on aesthetics, but not as much. Should you be also focusing on like usability and other things? Well, it's not a simple answer. There are like some examples that show us that it depends. So the first example that I have here is Google. Like, does Google needs to be stunning, aesthetically pleasing? Well, they don't have to. They have to just show decent results that actually match your search, right? But they still pay attention to how it looks. There are some new icons there, actually. They are quite nice. And then we have this one. I call it Shamu. And does it look nice? No. Actually, is it easy to use? Not quite. However, they are able to survive looking not very nice and actually not being easy to use because they have the best information for weather in Slovakia. So that still makes them be able to survive, right? And then there's ASOS, which is another example. So you would look at ASOS and you'd think that ASOS really needs to be aesthetically pleasing because people are buying fashion, right? So people want to buy things that are prettier. Imagine ASOS without the pictures, without the nice illustrations. It would probably not be such a nice experience. However, imagine also if ASOS had a checkout that was very complicated, probably they wouldn't be as popular as they are, right? So the thing is that it always depends on the situation. So I have this pyramid here. This pyramid is the basic user needs pyramid by Aaron Walter. And basically what this guy says is that before you focus on things such as delightful instead of user needs, you should start by focusing on functional. So before you move up, you have to cover the basic steps. However, this is also very tricky because let's imagine that you are a product manager or a business owner, and normally you are trying to focus on having as many features as you want, so you want to cover all the use cases in an application, because you don't want the user to feel like your application is not fulfilling their needs. So you try to cover as many things as you want. But that's not quite always the case that you need to do. Or you have this situation here, which sometimes happens to UI designers and interaction designers, or the Dribbble design, let's say, that people are focusing a lot on making things that look nice, they are delightful with animations and motion design, and that's very important. However, you cannot only focus on the top of the pyramid. So normally for a UX designer, this is the ideal situation that you're trying to find. So you're trying to cover you're trying to design something that's at least functional, that you can rely on, that's easy to use, but that's also delightful. That's normally how the concept of MVP works. Because like you don't want an MVP that's just something there, it's a button that you click, but you also want something that's reliable, usable, and delightful. All right, so that covers the topic of finding nicer inspirations on Dribbble, right? And now I want to move on to the topic of when you're trying to look for inspiration of things that are innovative on Dribbble or on other platforms. And I have an example here. So the question would be, which of these two applications is better or it's more innovative? So here you have on the right side, WordStar. That's a 30-year-old application, text editing application. And the one on the left is a very recent application. It's called Bear for macOS. And it's also a text editing application. So if I tell you and I ask you what's the best application for somebody that's actually trying to write a book, you might be leaning towards the one on the left because it provides you with a lot of features. You can do a lot of editing, you can do some linking, you can do some backup. However, even then, it depends because there is more to design than just looking nice and providing a lot of features. So for example, in this case, there's George Martin. He's the writer of the Game of Thrones books, basically. And in his case, or at least up to 3 years ago, he prefers to write his books in WordStar, the the MS-DOS application. And his reasons for doing that is that he says he doesn't need spell check, he doesn't need grammar check, he doesn't need autocorrect. He only needs something that he can write on. So basically he has two computers. One computer he uses for doing all his writing, like an older computer with WordStar, not very safe for backupping, basically. And then he has a regular computer that he uses for email, Facebook maybe, and all the other stuff. So when we are judging whether a design is better or not, there are some things that you should probably take into consideration. And Kat was already talking about some of these things. So there are some things such as what's the target audience, what are the constraints that comes with this product, which technology are we going to use it on? Is it going to be a mobile phone that's actually 10 years old, that doesn't have very good internet in a poorer country? Or maybe the preference of people, what do people actually prefer to use? And also there's the context, everything that surrounds the product itself. So in the case of Martin, what he prefers, the reason how he decides what's best for him is his personal preference. So he prefers something that's simpler, something that he's already used to, right? So that leads to my question. So when is innovation necessary, right? And the way that I'm going to try to explain this a bit is by focusing on context. And I'm going to go a bit on a story here. All right, so I'm going to try to explain this with the design principle of convergence. So there's a description here. There are some heavy words here, but I'm going to explain it better later. So natural or human-made systems tend to become stable over time as they reach optimal strategies. So the focus here for me is stable, becoming stable, and I'm going to go a bit deeper on the stable here. So I'm going to talk a bit about stable systems, what it means. So stable systems go both in nature and human-made, and I'm going here all the way back 200 million years ago. So we have dinosaurs here. And basically this design principle also applies here, because if you look at the problem of flying, and I'm being very vague here, dinosaurs that fly, but if you look at the problem of flying, this problem has been solved 200 million years ago. We have animals that fly, dinosaurs feel like this. They have wings, and basically they flap their wings to go higher, or they glide when they want to keep the altitude or go lower, and that's basically it. And that was 200 million years ago. But you can still look at today, and you see birds from today, and basically the solution for the problem is still the same. So basically they flap their wings to go higher, they glide to keep the altitude, and then also to go lower. So throughout 200 million years, that system, that solution is very stable, and it didn't have to change much. And it also applies to even animals that you wouldn't think about flying much. This is a flying squirrel. It doesn't really flap wings to fly. However, it still glides when it's going from a high place to a slightly less high place. But this is not just natural system. You can also see this in human-made design. So here I have some examples from cars. These cars are not completely accurate, but basically here we have 140 years of car design. And if you go back 140 years up until now, cars, they are designed, the concept basically the same. So they have four wheels, they have a steering wheel that you use to move the car, to steer the car, and they have a combustion engine. But you can say there, okay, not all cars are like this now. Some cars are electric, we are working on self-driveless cars. However, the concept is mostly the same. Four wheels, steering wheel, and so on. And you can also see this on chatting interfaces. So here I'm going all the way back to ICQ 1996. And in chat interfaces, you had basically two things. You had your list of friends, you have it there, and then you had the message chatting part. So even as time progresses, 1998, 2005, 2008, you still have the same thing. You have a list of friends, and you have text that you can use to talk to them. And I go more to the future, have WhatsApp, iMessage, Telegram. Still the same principle, still the same solution for the problem of chatting, which is very stable. And even now, 2019,
it's still basically the same. You can say that some of these chat interfaces, they have some more added value. There's some emoji, there is some, here we have Snapchat with messages that disappear. There are some more added things, but basically the structure of the solution for this problem, it remains the same because the problem is very stable. Now we can go to unstable systems, which is the other side of the coin. And I'm going back to nature. This is not 200 million years ago. This is like 500 million years ago. And I'm going back to where life originated. So life originated as very small, simple organisms, right? And over time and as those organisms were facing challenges, they started to adapt to actually be able to face those challenges. Of course, when we're talking about nature, these things take a lot of time. So it was not like 1 year there was a cell, the other year there's a fish. It was more like over millions of years, these things adapted, but they came to a point where things are stable enough and didn't change much. However, this is actually tricky because we are only here for a small amount of time, so we're not actually able to see how things are going to progress in the future. But we can look at human-made stuff, right? So I'm looking here at the first iPhone that came out in 2007/8. The thing is, there was a new technology that was introduced. So up until then, you had these dumb phones that you used to use, and now you have this smartphone that you have no idea how to actually use this thing and how to design for this thing. So at the very early stages of design for the iPhone and for smartphones, things were changing radically. So every week, every month, there were different ways of actually designing for the iPhone. But that was 10 years ago, and now, if you're designing an application, you have all these standards and you actually know how to do certain things for mobile applications. If I come a bit more forward to the recent time, I have here some technology that are not stable yet. We have folding phones. Some phones fold like this, some have 3 screens, 4 screens, but that is not stable yet. People are still experimenting a lot with that technology. And we also here have some AI, we have AR, here we have Minecraft, there we have Magic Leap. But those things are things that are not standardized yet. So basically, if I ask you here to design for me a food delivery application for your mobile phone, you're probably going to do everybody's going to do something very similar. There's going to be maybe some bottom menu, there's going to be a list of restaurants, a list of dishes. It's going to be very similar. But if I ask you to design an application for AR, for food delivery, probably there's going to be a lot of different designs in the room because that system has not yet stabilized. So there's a lot of room for experimentation. All right, so I want to show a case study from Lighting BEETLE. This case study is surrounding a ERP system. That's an enterprise resource management system. And people that use this type of system, they use this system every single day from morning to the leave work. And you see there, it's 2014, even though it looks like it's like 1998. But that's actually a real system. And it only worked on Internet Explorer, actually. So we were challenged to redesign this. And this was one of our proposals. So at that time, 2016, cards were very, very popular. So we had cards everywhere because the previous design had all this mess. Things were not very well grouped together. And we thought, OK, we have to put some order on this. And we introduced cards. And there was also a lot of visual clutter on the interface. So we tried to reduce the visual clutter as well. But that was not the only thing. We also had this quote-unquote innovative way of interacting with the application. So we had this what we call the helicopter view, which was a menu that you could open, and you could see all the 3 layers of navigation all at once. You had some gestures that you could do to go to places. You had some voice assistant that you could use. And we were very excited by what we were doing because we were like, we are disrupting the ERP system or status quo, right? However, that was not very successful. And that's a prime example of what I was just talking. Because ERP systems are a system that is already very, very stable. So people are already so used to that. And the way ERP systems are designed is already so standard that if you try to really break it and make something completely different, it doesn't work. So after learning that, we changed a bit, and we did this, which is not anything crazy and innovative. It's just like an incremental evolution from what was there before. Doesn't look like Internet Explorer anymore. But we were still able to keep a few things here that we envisioned in our design. So we still have some cards there to keep the things more grouped together. And there's also these favorite bookmarks here, because when we were researching, we learned that people, in order to be able to be more effective, they were doing bookmarks, so we just introduced that into the screen. So yeah, it was not a huge leap in innovation, but it was some incremental progress. All right, so to wrap it up, I have just some takeaways from what I've been talking. So the first thing is, when you're designing, you have to figure out whether you're designing for a stable environment or an unstable environment. Because once you figure out that, there are very big implications. So the way that you figure this out is that you're going to do your research, you're going to do comparative analysis, and if everything that you find actually looks kind of the same, it's a very good indication that that system is very, very much stable. So what you do is that you avoid radical changes, and you focus on minor innovation, for example, as I showed in the ERP system. So you don't reinvent the wheel completely, but you make some small adjustments. As I said, you strive for incremental improvements. And on the other side of the coin, you have when you're designing for unstable environments, and that's what you should do. You should experiment a lot, because probably the first thing you're going to design is not going to be the optimal one, maybe not the second one, maybe not the third one. So you should probably experiment a lot until you find something that actually works for you in that context. Second one is that you should look for analogies, because people understand things easier when you approach the solution to something they already know. So if you take, for example, AI, so before, the way that people use, because AI has not been here since 5 years ago, it's been here for a long time. And the way people used to communicate with AI was through a terminal or through something very archaic. And people found this analogy of communicating with AI via chat, for example. So that was an analogy that helped people actually come closer together to a solution to these unstable environments. And finally, feel free to innovate. That's a place, if you find yourself on an unstable environment, you're free to innovate. But of course, you should always be testing and researching. And finally, don't forget about this pyramid, the basic needs pyramid. Because even if it's unstable environment or stable environment, you should still be striving to fulfilling all of these different levels of needs. Okay, just to wrap it up, I hope you are not afraid now to use Dribbble, because I'll keep using Dribbble because that's very useful. But next time you use Dribbble, at least be more conscious and do not just take for granted the solutions, but think about the context behind of that, and also if it's a stable or unstable environment. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So far, I have heard feedback that this was, how to put, awesome presentation.
Thank you.
So yeah, that's the first feedback. Feel free to talk to Walter after. We have only one microphone, so we are juggling. Before we jump into the questions, so you still have time to ask them, we put there a poll for the topics you are interested in, and one of the topics that popped up was design systems. Now, Walter, you are organizing a meetup about design systems next week, so how about you just talk a little bit about it, and whoever is interested in this topic, listen.
All right, but also you told me that maybe tickets are not available anymore. But we are organizing a design systems meetup next 25th of June. We have 3 speakers. One is an in-house speaker. Our developer is going to talk about our process in design systems. And then we also have somebody from Duovera, one of our biggest clients, coming to talk about how they use design systems at Duovera. And we have someone from Kiwi coming over to speak about how they use design systems in their company. So it's going to be very nice. I'm going to check if there are still tickets available, because I'm not entirely sure. They might not be. But we're going to record the meetup, and it's going to be made available online. So in case there are no tickets, we'll see to get you those presentations so you can get more into that topic. All right.
Okay, I'll just read it out. Thank you for a case study by somebody I don't know who is. Can you share how was the communication between you and the client? How did they feel and react when you showed them the initial idea?
All right, so it's also something that Katka said in her presentation, that one of the key things for design is communication. So sometimes when you're a designer and you have these communication skills, you can basically sell anything to the client. And in this case, I'm not going to say that we just sold anything to the client, but we did prepare like a very strong presentation on a way to defend the designs that we had. So they were on board with what actually we had designed. And we did research in partnership with the client before to actually create what you created. And we did testing afterwards. So they were always getting the information from us, how things were progressing. And it was more towards the part when we were testing that it starts to show to us that actually was not the best approach to that design. So then that's when, in a mutual level, we sort of agreed that that's not what we wanted to do, and we decided to change the approach to something less crazy, let's say, for ERP.
Yeah, I'm interested. What does the dash? What does it
It's
mean?
just a correction for this.
Oh, okay, cool. Thank you. Where is the breaking point between evolution and revolution? Should designer educate or push the users?
So I wouldn't say that you should push the users, but the thing is, even when you're working on unstable environments, it doesn't mean that you cannot bring something completely new. It just means that it takes more time. So let's say the ERP that we created, the thing that we envisioned, it could still work, but not in 6 months, maybe in 5 years. So you gotta have a bigger plan. So you gotta plan for these small iterations. So you're going to have a vision, and you're going to think, okay, this is where we want to go. And you have to have a vision that actually makes sense. So you want, in case of ERP, you don't just want to make something that's cool and that's innovative, but you actually want to make something that makes people more effective. Because people working on ERPs, they want to be more effective. They don't want to spend the whole day struggling with their software. So if you have a vision and step by step you go towards achieving that vision, you might get there to this more evolution, innovative kind of step, basically. Okay, you want to read it? Okay. What are the main steps of your design process? So this kind of like depends on the project you're working on, because we have 4 different kinds of projects that we normally say. We have transformation project, which is when we try to change the way a company works, trying to make them more user-centric. Then we have optimization projects, where it's like a redesign or just making things slightly better. We have what we call the innovation projects. That's when we are creating something completely new. And we have the 4th one that I forgot. But all of them, they sort of work the same, because we try to use our what's called the double diamond approach. So we are always diverging and converging. So we have an exploration at the beginning of the project where we're trying to research and understand all the problems of the users. And then we are summarizing those points from research to try to understand actually what's the challenge that we're going to do. Normally, after this point, that's when we have a design sprint. We don't have it with every single project, but it's very common that we have a design sprint there to actually focus ourselves into what we want to actually design. Then after that, we are building some concepts, try to understand or create a vision for the project we are working on. And at the end, what we call delivery, that's when we are narrowing down our concepts and trying to push forward the thing that we think works the best. And after that point where we have a concept, a vision that we're pushing forward, that's when we are normally working Lean UX and Agile to actually deliver things on an MVP sort of basis.
So we have a lovely question about research. How do you select people you are testing with? And when do you know you have enough of them? That goes for quantity and quality.
Okay. So selecting people is a very Well, it kind of depends, but it's a very big cooperation with the client, because the moment you start a project, the people that knows the best about the project, it's a client, right? So that's normally a very big cooperation to see what are the people that you want to talk to. What will happen is during research, there might be a moment where you actually see that those people are actually not the target audience for that product, and then you might change it, but it's always some type of cooperation with the client. So that's actually one of the parts of our design process, because we normally want to work with clients that are really willing to join our team, because otherwise we're just working on the dark. We are making assumptions about who is the target audience, we are making assumptions who we should be asking questions. But aside from that, we also use some recruitment methods, for example, directly pulling people from the application. So if you have an application already working online, you can pull people directly from there, from some analytical tools or some tools for actual recruitment. And then you're asking, what are the factors to know when it's enough? Well, there are always these magic numbers, right? So people say that for research, you want to have from 3 to 5 people of the same segment on your audience, but that sort of depends. You do research until you see that things start to repeat and you're not going to learn anything new. Sometimes this can be 2 people, sometimes this can be 5 people. I remember that there was a research that we did last year that we actually interviewed 30 people, and by the 10th person, it was very clear that it was useless to keep researching those people. However, it was in the agreement that we were going to interview all those people, so we ended up interviewing that just for the sake of statistics and to create personas, but you normally see how you progress. So it's good for you to have an agreement with the client that you're going to interview at least this amount of people, and if you see that you need more, you get more. And for quantity, it really depends. Sometimes it's at least 20, it really depends. I don't know a precise number for that. What was your last project about? I don't know if I can mention the one that I'm working on right now, but I can mention the one previous to that, which was for the European Environmental Agency. And we were working on a data platform to help people get a better understanding of issues in climate and in climate change and energy in Europe. So we were, that's the project where we were interviewing 30 people. And we were trying to understand how different segments consume data and create a knowledge about climate change and energy in Europe. Okay.
I think that's that. If you have any more questions or you would like to ask something, you can just go to Walter. Hey, even that. Go to him, have some pie, have some Coke, talk about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, too.